Yes, ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest problems people face in life is that they allow their emotions to dictate their actions. They wake up, feel a certain way, and that feeling determines their entire day. If they feel tired, they act sluggish. If they feel frustrated, they lash out. If they feel afraid, they withdraw. And you see, that's not strength, that's servitude. That's being a slave to your emotions, and that's not the way forward. Now, you might say, well, emotions are important, and you'd be right, they are, but they are not commands. They are not absolute truths. They are, at best, signals that can be interpreted, analyzed, and directed. And if you don't understand that, if you don't take control over that process, then what happens? You become reactive, you become impulsive, and then you become unpredictable even to yourself. You think about it. If you can't regulate yourself, how can you expect to navigate the world? If you can't get a hold of your anger, how can you expect to maintain relationships? If you can't push through anxiety, how can you expect to achieve meaningful success? If you let sadness overwhelm you, how will you ever climb out of that pit when life gets tough? And it will get tough because life is suffering and everyone encounters hardship. So what do? You start by understanding that emotions are data, not dictators. When you feel something, ask yourself, why am I feeling this? What is this emotion telling me? Is it based on reality, or is it just a reaction to something that I don't fully understand? That's the first step, awareness. Most people never get there. They just feel something and obey it like an unconscious machine. But you are not a machine, you are a conscious being, and that means you have the capacity for thought, for analysis, for self-regulation. And when you start to practice that, you begin to build strength. You don't explode in anger because you recognize that anger is often a secondary response. It's a mask for something deeper, like fear or frustration. You don't crumble under anxiety because you learn to separate rational fear from irrational overthinking. And you don't give in to despair because you understand that even the darkest emotions are temporary if you refuse to let them consume you. Now, the second part of this is even more critical. You have to be willing to step into discomfort. You have to be willing to confront suffering. Because let's be honest, life is hard. And the more you avoid difficulty, the weaker you become. That's an undeniable truth. People often think that avoiding pain is the way to happiness. They think that comfort is the goal. And that's a catastrophic mistake. It's wrong biologically, psychologically, and philosophically. You are not designed for perpetual comfort. You are designed to struggle, to strive, to overcome. That's where meaning is found. That's where real strength is built. Take physical exercise as an example. If you never push your body, if you never lift heavy things, your muscles atrophy, you become weaker. The same applies to your mind and your character. If you avoid difficult conversations, you become incapable of speaking the truth. If you shy away from responsibility, you become incompetent. If you refuse to confront your fears, they will rule over you like a tyrant. So what's the answer? You voluntarily seek out difficulty. You willingly step into situations that make you uncomfortable because that's how you grow. You take on challenges not because they are easy, but because they are hard. You discipline yourself to do the things you don't want to do, but know you must. And in doing so, you become more resilient, more competent, and more formidable. People often say, oh, but that's too hard. Well, of course it's hard. Everything worthwhile is hard. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is weakness. The alternative is living a life where you are fragile, where you are incapable of dealing with reality as it is. And that's not a place you want to be. So you have a choice. You can continue being controlled by your emotions, letting them dictate your actions, your thoughts, and ultimately your destiny, or you can take responsibility for yourself. You can master your emotions rather than being mastered by them. You can step into discomfort, embrace the struggle, and grow into someone truly strong. And that, my friends, is the path forward. Focusing on what you can control. Now, this isn't just some cliche motivational phrase. It's a profound psychological principle, one that has been explored deeply in philosophy, in clinical practice, and even in the way societies organize themselves. It's the difference between taking responsibility for your life and allowing yourself to be a victim of chaos. What happens when you focus on what you can't control? Well, first, you develop resentment. Because if you believe that your fate is in the hands of external forces, you will feel powerless. And when people feel powerless, they start to externalize blame. They become bitter, and bitterness is a terrible thing. It seeps into every aspect of your being. It corrupts your perceptions, poisons your relationships, and distorts your sense of purpose. If you spend your days thinking about how unfair life is, how much you've been wronged, how circumstances, governments, corporations, parents, society, whoever you choose, have conspired against you, you become paralyzed. And what happens when you're paralyzed? You fail to act. You relinquish your agency. You start to believe that effort is futile. And here's the terrible consequence of that. If you stop acting because you think effort is futile, you ensure that your life remains miserable. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't improve, not because you can't improve, but because you've convinced yourself that trying is pointless. That is nihilism, and nihilism is a dead end. It's a philosophy that leads nowhere except despair. Now, contrast that with the mindset of someone who focuses only on what they can control. This is a person who understands that while they might not control the weather, they control how they prepare for it. They don't control the economy, but they control their work ethic. They don't control other people's actions, but they control how they respond to them. And that distinction is crucial, because when you focus on what you can control, you stop being a passive recipient of life's chaos and start actively structuring your own existence. You assume responsibility, and responsibility is what gives life meaning. Viktor Frankl, the great psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote extensively about this in Man's Search for Meaning. He observed that the people who survived the brutal concentration camps were often those who refused to let their internal world be dictated by external horrors. They couldn't control the guards, they couldn't control the starvation, they couldn't control the suffering, but they could control their response. And that's what kept them human. That's what kept them from breaking completely. And this isn't just about extreme situations. This principle applies in every aspect of daily life. Take relationships, for example. You don't control your partner. You don't control their thoughts, their emotions, their past experiences. But you do control how you communicate with them, how you react to difficulties, and how much effort you put into understanding them. If you spend all your time trying to change another person, you will fail. But if you spend time improving yourself, developing patience, refining your ability to listen, you will find that your relationships improve dramatically. And this principle applies to career as well. People often say, well, I can't get ahead because my boss is an idiot, or the industry is rigged, or there's no opportunity for someone like me. All right, fine. Maybe all those things are true, but so what? What are you going to do about it? If you focus on what you can't change, you will stagnate. But if you focus on what you can change, your skills, your discipline, your capacity to adapt, you will move forward. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in the way you expected, but eventually progress happens for those who take action. And here's the really remarkable thing. The more you focus on what you can control, the more control you actually gain over life. Because when you discipline yourself to take responsibility, your confidence increases. Your resilience grows. People start to rely on you. You become someone who can be counted on, and that opens doors. It builds networks. It fosters trust. People who take responsibility are the ones who are promoted. They are the ones who lead. They are the ones who create, innovate, and push civilization forward. On the other hand, people who wallow in victimhood, who complain endlessly about the unfairness of existence, don't get anywhere. And it's not because the world is particularly cruel to them, it's because they make themselves small. They shrink from responsibility, and in doing so, they make themselves less capable, less prepared, and ultimately less free. Freedom and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. If you refuse responsibility, you also refuse freedom. You become a puppet of external circumstances. But if you accept responsibility, you gain autonomy. You gain power, not over others, over yourself. And that's the only kind of power that actually matters. So what does this look like in practice? How do you train yourself to focus only on what you can control? It starts with small, simple steps. If your room is messy, clean it. If your body is weak, strengthen it. If your schedule is chaotic, organize it. These are things you can do today, right now. And don't underestimate the impact of these small changes. If you can impose order on your immediate surroundings, you prove to yourself that you have agency. And once you see that you have agency, you will begin to apply that principle to larger and larger domains of your life. You'll start setting higher standards for yourself. You'll stop tolerating the things that keep you weak. You'll become someone who doesn't just react to life, but shapes it. And here's something even more profound. The moment you focus only on what you can control, your suffering decreases. Not because life stops being difficult, life is difficult, but because you are no longer engaging in the pointless, agonizing exercise of trying to manipulate the uncontrollable. You free yourself from that burden. You stop waging war against reality and start working with it. And that's when real progress happens. People often ask me, how do I become stronger? How do I become more resilient? And the answer is simple, though not easy. Stop fixating on what's outside your control. Take stock of what's within your grasp. Focus on making that better every single day. That's how you build strength. That's how you become the kind of person who thrives, no matter what life throws your way.